The wild goose is loose.
Yeah, some team's going to go on a wild goose chase.
Big Chad energy.
The Chiefs brought back their leading wide receiver from 2022. Sorry. Plus, early cut down reactions and more. Let's go.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. You know it's live because I can't say 2022 and I mispronounce it, and it's on tape. It's all out here. I'm Ken Swanson. I'm here with Matthew Lane. Hi, Matthew. How are we?
We're doing pretty good. College football was amazing this past weekend. It was like it was like breathing new life into me. It was a phenomenal week 0. I was happy that happened because I also, on that very same day, I took a kid to a paintball birthday party. We played the last game, sprained the heck out of my ankle trying to jump around a kid so I didn't truck like a second grader. It wasn't a good time, but week 0 football kept me strong. We took one for the team, didn't plow through a kid, and here we are.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't hurt anybody. That's nice.
Yeah,
Good job,
I did not hurt a child. I avoided them, but it's cool because I'm so young that my ankle's actually already bouncing back now. Like we're already pretty functional. We can already do stuff. We're gonna see how working out goes. It was bad for the first day though. I sent you a picture. You saw it.
It was pretty bad. I also have a question. You use Twitter in one of the most unique ways I've ever seen in my life today. You used, instead of saying on one hand and then saying on the other hand,
yeah,
use the right hand emoji and then the left hand emoji. I've never seen someone do that in my life.
Yeah, it's what us youth do. You wouldn't know about that. Those of us whose ankles can heal quickly, we come up with innovative ways to use the Twitter.
Tucker, have you ever seen anybody do that in your life, or is this just an original thing from Matty Lane?
I haven't seen anybody do it, but as soon as I saw it, I knew what he was doing.
I know, it was great. It was brilliant. Like, I was like, this is a really good...
I truthfully didn't think twice about it. I just figured, I was like, oh, that seems like a very Matty thing to tweet.
It really does. But yeah, I thought it was funny. You're talking about Samaje Perine, someone that is potentially going to be traded or released. We might talk about him in a little bit here. Perhaps, some are saying. We do need to start with the news of the day. The Chiefs have signed JuJu Smith-Schuster.
I was going to ask you how you're doing. I want to know how you were doing, Kent. We talked about me. We talked about my weekend. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, man. I'm great. I'm doing fantastic. I was very excited to get on the show tonight. Like I was thinking about it, just like, we are very close to the season starting. I was excited to hang out with you. I'm excited to hang out with you next week. We've been slowly planning some things. I'm making sure that you are checking a bag. I'm doing my due diligence as the older one of this group. I got a lot of big brother energy coming out of me. I texted Maddie last week and I said, "Are you bringing a bag that you can check?"
I was not going to until that conversation happened. So yeah.
Yeah, you need to make sure, because I have a bottle of Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon lore that is very special that you just, you couldn't take home with you.
I wonder how that possibly got out of my grasp on the first night of the draft coverage.
No one knows. No one that watches it knows either. I literally took care of that for you too. Like I held on to it for you. I think I put it in my car that night. Just to
somebody did, because I sure didn't.
Anyways, I'm excited to see Maddie and hang out with Maddie. He's going to be in town next week. He's going to be there for the KCSN golf tournament, which is going to be an incredible time. Me and Maddie are going to be driving a beer cart around, so we're going to be hanging out with everybody. Anyways, there's still some time left to sign up, and it is something that supports a lot of really cool initiatives that we have throughout the year at the KCSN Foundation. Help with children literacy, help with supporting and feeding the homeless, giving kids that may not have the best Christmas a great Christmas. There's a lot of really cool things that this community has done to rally together to help do good for our city. And it's been really cool to see you guys love on your city. And you can love on your city if you put a golf team together. If you can put a foursome of golf players together, you can come out, you can have delicious food. Some briskets are going to be smoked. Mission Taco is going to be out there. Holidays supporting with a bunch of tents. And you can help do good and raise money. All this money is going towards the KCSN Foundation. It is a remarkably efficient nonprofit that is, candidly, I mean, BJ puts a lot of effort into it that, doesn't always get rewarded financially. So this is something that supports this is something that just does a lot to support the things that we're trying to do. So consider putting a team together. You're going to have an absolutely great time. The link in the description of the show. There's also, you can Venmo KC Sports Network with your entry. You can go to givebutter.com/KCSN. And I think that link will be in the show or in the description of the show as well. So please continue supporting, and please consider, if you haven't already, consider putting a team together, because it's going to be a lot of fun, and you get to raise a lot of money to help some initiatives that they mean a lot to us too here at KC Sports Network. All right, so can I talk about JuJu now or no?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good time to talk about JuJu. We've gone about 6 minutes now, and we haven't talked football yet. You're bad. I think we should probably get to the football talk, though.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Yeah, appreciate it. Chiefs have signed JuJu Smith-Schuster.
Because the Chiefs did sign JuJu Smith-Schuster today.
Really? What were the terms of that deal, Matthew?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm going to guess like 1 year for roughly the vet minimum of like $1.21 million or something like that, because he's still getting money from the Patriots. But you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. The Chiefs signed JuJu Smith-Schuster to a veteran minimum deal. He's been out on the market for a couple weeks. Chiefs essentially wait for cutdown day, the remainder of camp, to be completed before they come to terms with this, with the free agent. Not really surprised at all by the timing. I think if there was interest, there probably has been interest for a little while, for the last couple of weeks since he was cut. And I think the timing in which they've done it probably makes a little bit of sense too, right? JuJu can wait out to see if there's anybody that, comes into dire need for the receiver, for their receiver room across the National Football League. But also, hey, he gets out the rest of camp. Chiefs kind of let these guys compete. Maybe one pops, maybe one doesn't. Maybe they can try to trade one of these players without, losing a little bit of leverage here or there. So I thought, the timing doesn't surprise me really at all. I don't think there's too much to look into the timing when it comes to like what's changed over the last 2 weeks. I'm not sure a ton really has changed over the last 2 weeks. These are a lot of players on this roster at the receiver position that are pretty well known by this point. I mean, Justin Ross has been here for 3 years. I know he hasn't played or been able to participate in practice for all three. He's been around for a while. Nico Remigio has been around the building for the last 2 years. It seems like one of those guys is probably going to be on the outside looking in because of the JuJu Smith-Schuster signing. But anyway, we can get to those guys in a minute. What do you think about just the signing of JuJu Smith-Schuster?
Yeah, it doesn't move. Okay, so on the surface, it doesn't like move me one way or the other. I'm not saying I think it's a great move. I also don't think that's a bad move in any way, shape, or form. They saw a veteran wide receiver that is going to be familiar with the system and with a lot of the personnel here that matters. Matt Nagy, sounds like Matt Nagy was a big person pushing for it. Patrick Mahomes has always had a good connection with JuJu Smith-Schuster. So there's a reason that it makes sense. I also think that from what we've seen of JuJu Smith-Schuster's knee, from how he looked last year on a football, really how he looked from like week 14 on from the 2022 season till now, he just doesn't have a lot of juice. So it's not like he's coming in and I'm expecting big things, but it's not a bad signing necessarily. I do think it's interesting to bring in a veteran that probably isn't going to play much special teams when you already do have a handful of wide receivers that probably aren't playing a lot of special teams. So I thought that part was interesting, and this can take us down an entirely other tangent. I wonder if wide receivers just aren't needed on special teams anymore because you no longer just need fast guys to run down the field on kick coverage. Like now they actually have to tackle. So this is like a larger John Ross point too. He played a lot of special teams reps last year. But now that he's going to have to tackle, do you really want John Ross playing as a kick coverage player with a fused neck? I don't know. So I guess not qualms, but some things about the movie I'm just like, yeah, okay, that's fine, it's whatever. And then other things that it kind of makes sense. The area though that I think that it has the most upside is if you do end up getting a Rashee Rice suspension in the middle of the year, or if Hollywood Brown does end up missing significant amounts of time, then I think you feel a lot better sliding JuJu Smith-Schuster into the rotation than you do a Sky Moore or a Justin Ross or a Nico Remigio or a McCole Hardman or whoever. You have a safety net of somebody that you feel comfortable immediately inserting into that kind of role.
So the top wide receiver from a special teams perspective last year was 16th in special teams snaps on this team last year. If you take away Tommy Townsend, James Winchester, and Harrison Butker, that number is 13th. So he's not like it was Justin Watson with 91 snaps. No one really played a ton of special team snaps for this football team at the receiver position last year. And now, you're looking at some of the rules, and they may be even more phased out of being responsible in participating. The Chiefs have avoided using their receivers. By the way, that was from Jinx. I can't believe that we are citing Jinx right now, but he did put that up there. I don't think special teams is as big of a factor when you're looking at the roster construction of the receiver room than it used to be. The Chiefs kept 7 wide receivers last year, and they kept 7 that really didn't play a ton of special teams. I mean,
I think the only thing that matters is just, do you have a returner? Do you have a returner? Do you have returners within your wide receiver group? And this is why I think it gets a little tricky to only keep 6 when you do know that it's Hollywood, Worthy, Rice, Watson, JuJu. How are you only keeping 6 next and getting a punt and kick return out of it? The easy answer would be Hardman, and he could do both of those things. He could take over both return spots, but it seems like we're all kind of leaning towards Sky Moore. So like this is just the one area where I kind of wonder if 6 wide receivers isn't overly likely, because you do got to find a way to get your returners coming from that group most likely.
Sky Moore and McCole Hardman would be the logical candidates. And like, honestly, like Nico and Justin Ross probably are combined right now, unless Hollywood Brown goes on IR on the outside looking in, if you're doing the math, right? Like it's Worthy, unless Hollywood Brown goes on IR, it's Hollywood, Worthy, Rashee, Sky, Justin Watts, JuJu, and then probably McCole. Like that's probably your group you're looking at, and your returners are McCole and Sky Moore. They gave Carson Steele a look at the returner as well.
I was going to say the slander of Carson Steele. I actually kind of love the idea of your returners having one guy be, like the bigger bruiser that's just going to go straight downhill, and a Carson Steele, and then you put some speed behind him, whether it's Sky Moore or McCole Hardman. Like, we want to get real nerdy with the special team stuff. I kind of like that more than just having 2 fast guys. And like, I'm sure at some point, having some trickery in there and having 2 guys that are both fast to kind of be like a swing player, like for a lateral or something, might be beneficial. But like, I'm thinking at it from this way, like either you're kicking it to one side and letting the big bruising downhill running back get it and risking him breaking a tackle probably from a smaller player, or you're going to kick it to the faster guy, but then now you're getting a 230-pound fullback kind of leading the way for him. So I kind of like the idea of not putting 2 receivers back there, and they do have options with Sky Moore and McCole Hardman, who I think I'm kind of leaning towards both making it still at this point in time.
That's I think you're probably right. Back to just the JuJu signing. I like it. I think this is a move where he's the wide receiver 5 on this team, probably. I mean, this is not a guy that's probably, I could see for at least a while, I think Justin Watson's probably out snapping JuJu Smith-Schuster. And I don't think it's a guy that you need to play a big role, but it's a guy who has a ton of experience, who can take a bigger workload if needed, to be, a guy that has that trust with Patrick Mahomes. Getting that kind of player to be a, wide receiver 4-5 type on your roster, I think is a no-brainer. And, I understand that he's not the same dude that he was even in 2022. Like, there's a little bit of a lack of explosion. His yards per reception went down significantly. Even last year, it wasn't particularly good. But we've been talking about the space that this offense should be able to create. It's not like he's a guy that they're asking to run posts and verticals and really do that. They're asking him to run option routes in the middle of the field. They're asking him to see coverage the same way Patrick Mahomes does. And that's something that JuJu was very good at. And that's why he built the trust of Patrick Mahomes 2 years ago when he was the leading wide receiver for this football team, 18 months ago. So I think just getting a guy that's capable of doing that, that has that trust, that rapport with Patrick Mahomes, I think is just such a smart move for this team. I don't think it's at the expense of anything that's really, costly right now. Like I don't know how big of a factor a Justin Ross was going to play in this offense, or a Nico or Miho. I'm not sure either of them really can at this point.
Yeah.
And with Juju, I mean, this is a wide receiver 5 that if he goes out and he catches option routes and he gets 29 catches for 260 yards and averages 9 yards per catch, and 18 of them are for first downs, why not go out and just put him in that role?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I feel like a lot of it's got to be like insurance based for other players on the team, right? So like you start to look around at what this team has, and like you assume your top 3 wide receivers, and you can probably throw Justin Watson in there, which has been the entire crux of hey, maybe they'll keep Justin Ross, because if Justin Watson goes down, they don't really have anybody else in that mold that fills that role. They don't have a vertical ball getting receiver that can kind of win contested catches if you don't use Justin Watson. Like, they just don't have it. So there was an avenue for Ross there. But also, I think if you start to look at it now too, if Hollywood Brown's to miss time, who's on the roster that you feel comfortable stepping into that role of Hollywood Brown, right? Like, and I think people see the size of Hollywood Brown and the speed, and he obviously can beat teams deep because he is that fast. But you look at the predominant part of his NFL career, that's not what he's been. He's been a rather inefficient deep receiver. Now, a lot of teams kind of are afraid of it, so they play it a lot, but he's not been a super dangerous, super efficient deep receiver. He's been a lot better versus zone. He's been a lot better on short to intermediate routes that are breaking specifically to the inside of the field, towards the middle of the field. Who can still do those things? Who did those things for the Chiefs 2 years ago? That was JuJu Smith-Schuster. So like, yeah, the players look entirely different if you're going to stack JuJu Smith-Schuster and Hollywood Brown next to each other. But I don't think it's far-fetched to say that 75% or 60% of what Hollywood Brown's going to be asked to do on a game-by-game basis, JuJu Smith-Schuster could do in a pinch if they need him to fill in for him. Obviously, he could step into the Rashee Rice role as well. Now, that seems more far-fetched to me a little bit, because Juju gives you almost nothing after the catch at this point. Like, he just doesn't move the same. And so much of what Rashee Rice does is predicated on yak, but still same concept. He can do 60%, 75% of what you ask from Rashee Rice. You're covering a lot of your bases by getting JuJu Smith-Schuster on this team.
I think a lot of people think that people excited about the Juju move expect him to be the 2022 version of himself. And I don't think you need to expect that to be excited about the prospect of a guy that just has so much trust built with Patrick Mahomes, sees the field the same way he does, and can be a reliable guy in an area of the field that isn't going to require him to be some kind of super athlete or be as athletic 2022. Like, just be able to, see the coverage correctly, break the direction that you want on that Patrick Mahomes wants you to on an option route. And like, he can be reliable just in that role in of itself. But also, like, I guess my question for you is, we look at him and we've been throwing the word insurance around. And I think that's right. I think that's something that you can kind of classify him as. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's a break glass in case of emergency type player either, right? There's probably something in the middle there. So my question to you is, Matthew Lane, do you think that JuJu Smith-Schuster will be on the game day roster in week 1 of this season?
Well, yeah, because Hollywood Brown's not going to play.
Okay.
Now, if you ask me on week 5, right? Because that's like, if we assume worst case scenario, Hollywood Brown goes on the IR, he comes back by week 5, right? Like, let's just say week 5, do I think JuJu Smith-Schuster will be on the active roster? If things go the way the Chiefs want them to, no. If Hollywood Brown is healthy then, and he can do the offense and like run the offense the way they want to, I think that you have him. You feel good. If Xavier Worthy looks as good as he has in the preseason, you feel good about him. Rashee Rice isn't suspended. Justin Watson does something a little different than everybody else. I guess it kind of depends on who's returning at the time as well, but I'm just going to mentally for now say McCole Hardman's doing your kicks, or your punts, Sky Moore's doing your kicks. I don't know if you get that last wide receiver and JuJu Smith-Schuster to be suited up with everybody else healthy and the new / young guys in Worthy and Hollywood Brown are playing as well as they want them to. I think it's insurance for injuries, or in case what happened last year happens again. If all these young guys, all these new guys don't click, if somebody regresses like MVS did last year, they had nothing. When Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice wasn't ready, the other two guys weren't stepping up to what they hoped their development was going to show. They had nothing. Now this year, if that occurs again, they have the break in case of emergency JuJu Smith-Schuster kind of button. So I definitely see him a lot more as like insurance, or like in case guys get hurt, or in case things aren't going as planned.
I still have a feeling that he's going to be on the active roster on game day for all 5 weeks, that week 1 through 5. I think he's going to be on the active roster. I just have this. We
on
the
7 active receivers, or who's inactive for you then?
I think it.
One of the returners, and you just have that the other guy do both.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe
that's fine. If it's McCole Hardman, I feel okay with it. I have some, fears of Sky Moore being the punt returner, but I guess worst case scenario, Justin Watson can go fair catch the ball. He has shown that he can do that in a pinch as a punt returner. So maybe you just punt on punt returning, don't really try to get returns out of it. You just take the safe catch. You don't have McCole or Sky Moore active. You just I guess I could see the path to where you don't need both returners active for game day.
And I think there's enough guys. I don't know if they're really trying to get McCole super involved in the offense right now either, right? Like, who are you really trying to utilize on game day on offense? Are you trying to get McCole some runs still there? Are you trying to get Sky? So I could see the case for Sky over McCole in that scenario too. But I just I don't know. I just have a feeling, just like if you hear what Jason Anderson reports, our friend Jason Anderson over at 810, saying Nagy's been a big proponent of getting JuJu Smith-Schuster back on this roster. He's been a guy that's kind of been, banging on the table for him. I don't know. Makes me think that they really like him. They want him. Mahomes likes to throw to guys he trusts. Does he have full trust in Sky, or do they just know that Sky knows all the spots? Questions I have. I could think
see either should be playing though, right? Like from that aspect, like I don't think either should be seeing the field.
5 receivers would get run last year, even though the receivers were terrible. 6 receivers would get run, even if the receivers were terrible. Like that's not uncommon for this team
because they were all terrible.
Well, yeah,
4. But,
that's pretty normal. Saying. That's pretty normal to the Chiefs, though. Like, Byron Pringle's getting catches here and there, a few years ago, right?
Let me rephrase your question. If all wide receivers are healthy, how many snaps are you expecting JuJu Smith-Schuster to get on a weekly basis? If everyone's healthy,
like probably 18%, 25%, somewhere in that range. Like, I think it's I think that's what's good. I don't know, man. I have a feeling like this is probably I get what you're saying. I just kind of wonder if that's their line of thinking. And again, they play 3 receivers most of the time anyway. So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you've got 3 spots there, right? So it's worth paying attention. I'd like to see what Byron Pringle's snap counts were. Maybe Tucker can look that up a little bit while we're answering this question. Wyoder asks a good one, kind of talking about all this. Wyoder05. I would be curious to hear about where Ross has fallen short. So that's Justin Ross. No non-go routes, spacing, blocking. Okay, well, not lining up correctly was probably a tough spot there too. Like, this is year 3 and he's still struggling to line up. This is a guy that's been a package player historically for this team, even when he was on the active roster. So it's not like they're putting a huge workload on him. When it comes to just the skill set, it is a very defined skill set, and it is a very boom or bust type skill set. You either are a big receiver that can do everything and is capable of running a full route tree and really creating separation consistently. And if you can't separate consistently as a big receiver, you're kind of put into a corner of, I'm going to be an outside receiver. I'm going to have to win at the catch point. I'm going to have a very limited route tree and what I'm actually going to be able to do to get separation. I can, run a slant against off coverage and be a big body and catch the ball. I can run a fade and maybe get a little comeback here or there. It's really hard for these big type receivers to make an impact unless you are just an all-world type player. I think Justin Ross has kind of got a narrow skill set that maybe the Chiefs try to find a way to keep around. I'm not completely diminishing the skill set. How construction perspective, how you're going to take care of that. Like, I don't know. It's tough to find a spot for him right now with the rest of the roster at this point. But maybe you can grab him in occasionally and call him up in specific matchups. But yeah, that's kind of where he's cornered right now.
I mean, Justin Ross has a good skill set. He's a good contested catch ball winner when the ball is thrown up to him, and he works pretty well on the vertical route tree, whether that stops, hitches, comebacks to pair along with the goes, the fades, stuff like that. So like there's a very clear path for him to be utilized for just about any team. The problem is those things that I just said he does well are things the Chiefs don't like to throw. And it's not because they can't or anything like that. Just if you're Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and it's 3rd and 8, are you really dialing up the 50-50 fade to Justin Ross? Like, is that what you want to dial up if you're that team? Even if it's 1st and 10, are you wanting to dial up the Justin Ross play at any point in time? No. So the answer is probably no. So then you got to find other ways to make yourself useful. And that's kind of difficult when you don't run a super diverse route tree because you are a pretty linear athlete and you have had a lot of injuries in your past. And on top of the cherry on top for like where things kind of went wrong for like Justin Ross, not good showings blocking. Like it's just been a rough NFL career, and it's just been preseason and a little bit of last year, but he doesn't show up well as a blocker. And I think that's a big part of it. And then you add on having guys still needing to tell you where to line up, when to go in motion, where you're supposed to stop. You just kind of bad blocking, not quite knowing what to do from just this one specific wide receiver position, but let alone all of them. It's kind of a hard sell to make that and force a spot on a team that doesn't plan on maximizing your skill set as often as other teams. I think it's possible Ross still makes it to the practice squad. That injury, coming back from the fused neck stuff and the foot stuff, there might not be a lot of teams that are even considering bringing him in because they're not going to have the medical knowledge or anything on him. So he might be available. Or a team like the Fraudgulls, because they love to operate in that plane where they do just throw up 50-50 balls. Maybe they bring him in and say, hey, we'll give this a shot because we don't mind it being 3rd and 8 and just letting our wide receiver see if he can come down with this or not. Maybe a team that's more apt to do that more frequently takes a chance on him that isn't going to ask as much of him from like a totality standpoint.
From the Tucker D. Franklin Research Department, the D does stand for research. 2019 Byron Pringle snaps 14%, 2020 27%, 2021 49%. So like, yeah, I think somewhere in that like 14 to 25% range. Like I think that's the kind of range you could see. It's not like a super impactful piece of the roster, but it's somebody that's going to eat some snaps, and can do, some things. I can see them, I don't know. I could see them putting him on the field or on the active roster a decent amount this year.
10 to 20 snaps for JuJu Smith-Schuster from when I last saw him play football.
Percent of snaps. So you're like,
I'm looking right now. That's about 10 to 20 snaps. I'm looking at Justin Ross last year. 10 snaps was a 14%. 17 snaps was 25. Like I don't know the total snaps of the game, but like 10 to 20 snaps seems to be somewhere between 15 and 25%. So that's a lot of snaps for me to feel great about where I think this wide receiver room is. That means that's a lot of snaps taking off Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. Justin Watson's still going to have a role because he does do something that nobody else does. That's just a lot of snaps taking those guys off the field for the last version of what I saw from JuJu. I'm not saying it can't work, not saying it can't be good, and maybe with his ankle feeling better, because I do know there was the knee and then the ankle last year for the Patriots. Maybe he moves better. Maybe he moves a little bit closer to what he did in 2022 in Kansas City. And now all of a sudden those 20 snaps don't look quite as, I don't want to say bad, but like quite as daunting right now. But like right now, if you tell me that like we're signing up to take one of those other 3 wide receivers off the field for that many reps, I'm like, I think I'd rather see the more dynamic players at this point in time.
I get it. That's fair. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about some of the early cut reactions, some of the positions that need stall on this team. And then there's been some trade candidates that have been floated out there. We're going to talk about all that right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight. Appreciate you. We are on the eve of the final 53-man roster being announced for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs got out ahead of it a little bit early and have already started to make a wave of moves, getting this roster starting to pare it down a little bit. I can give you the full list real quick. Ian Book, Kyle Sheets, Alex Gubner, Nick Torres, Phillip Brooks, Miles Battle, Tyree Gillespie, Owen Carney, Jerquarius Spivey, Griffin McDowell, Randon Plattner, and I think the two most notable names, Echo Boy Doe and Kelvin Joseph, both waived in that first wave of releases. Initial thoughts on who you've seen go out the door so far, Matthew? You're muted. Couldn't be more muted.
Already said it and was coming back in. You're too late, buddy. Too quick for you. Too young. So no surprises. I think it's all been, like Kelvin Joseph, I guess, would be the closest to a surprise because early in training camp, he got some run with the ones. It looked like he was playing well, but I will say that hype kind of died down. It looked like, Spag said, hey, we're going to give him a shot. We're going to throw him out there with the top guys and see what happens. It didn't seem like it ever really clicked. You went through the preseason games and you don't tank someone based on the preseason games, but he looked like he had a few more struggles than you would have liked to see from a guy in that spot. He just didn't take, like I keep saying, with the cornerback 2 spot, just even the cornerback's position as a whole, he didn't take it and run with it, right? He didn't take the reins and go. So like a little surprising, but I think if I were, forced to make a 53-man roster prediction as of last night, I don't know if he would have made mine either. I think it has been not clear, but I think we were trending a little bit towards a Keith Taylor being ahead of him, towards a guy like, Roland Wallace possibly stealing an extra defensive back spot. So nothing I'm surprised about yet. We still have more cuts to go. So like there's obviously a few more guys on the roster still that I expect to be cut that haven't yet, but that's the only name out of those that really sticks out to me.
Yeah, Echo Boy Doe was a really fun story last year, and he got some opportunities to play with the active roster last year, and rightfully so. Like he had a great camp last year, and he has a role on special teams. I don't think that the Chiefs saw enough from him, and I don't think I saw enough from him at this point to necessarily say that he's better than some of the corners that are still on this roster now. So he might be a guy like I think. Because he's got a little bit of tape in the league, because he's got some special teams value, I think this one's going to be a little bit trickier for the Chiefs to hold on to potentially. I could see a team more interested in him and more attracted to him, and he might find one of those scenarios more attractive for his outlook, making an active NFL roster. And if so, best of luck to him, because I do think that he's kind of a guy that has a chance to potentially make somebody else's roster. Same with Kelvin Joseph. I could see a team still wanting to take a swing and a bet on that athletic ability and on that pedigree as a top 50 pick. But both of those guys, I think, are players that I'd like to see back on the practice squad. And if I'm looking at a few of the other guys I'd like to see back on the practice squad, I'd like to see Nick Torres. I think he'd be a guy I'd kind of like to see just continue to get some work. And there really isn't a ton of developmental offensive linemen that this team has had. So I'd like to see them try to get him. Miles Battle, because of the athletic profile of the cornerback out of Utah, he's another one I'd kind of like to kind of get eyes on here as well, just to see if they can kind of keep him on the practice squad a little bit longer. Any other thoughts on first release day, Matthew, both with the Chiefs or anybody outside of Kansas City that interested you?
Not really. We're going to talk about some guy, I guess, in positions in need. We'll talk about some other teams' cuts that maybe would make sense, I think, for the Chiefs. But no, none of the other guys the Chiefs cut made a ton, were super surprising to me. This is maybe just me trying to think too hard about this. I might be kind of like big braining myself here. I wonder if this wave of guys that have been released are not the guys the Chiefs don't really, really want back on the practice squad. They're either giving them a chance for other teams to see them ahead of all of the chaos before every name gets out there, or they're just guys that they straight up don't have any interest and they don't mind them being out there. It's kind of surprising for me for a guy like Boydo, who's been in the system. They clearly liked enough to bring back, but maybe for him, it's a favor of getting his name out there early instead of with the giant wave of everybody else. This doesn't look like the strongest crop of wave candidates that even I want to sit here and bang my fist on the table to get them on the practice
I think there could be an attempt to sneak a couple of these guys and try to hit that first wave, because I think there was plenty of releases that happened today, and then if you aren't doing your due diligence today, and then all of a sudden you've got another wave you've got to try to hit, right? All these teams, like, the timing could help sneak a couple of these guys a little easier with with the league. Yeah, I do think there could be a little bit of strategic timing, just throwing a couple names in there. That's still going to make it hard to, get through all of these guys here. So I always think about that, like the timing at which you release some of these. Why are you only down to 7 right now, Brett Veach?
Right. And just and looking at the names compared to some names that are still left, I think there's definitely sexier names left that are going to be waived. And so I think you hold those guys until the mass waves come in hopes that you can get them back to your practice squad better. These are these names to me, just the list in general. I don't mean that to, say anybody's a lesser player or anything, but these names here, I think, are names that you're like, if we lose them, okay. Or it's a guy that you're trying to do quote unquote right by giving him a head start and for other teams to see his name. Cause it's a lot easier to see these names now than it's going to be tomorrow.
You ever wonder if there's little handshake agreements with agents that say, hey, look, we'll release this guy early, give you guys a chance to go see what you got in the league. And if nobody comes and claims you, we'd love to have you back. Like, that's a little bargaining chip you might even be able to give out there too.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a huge part of it. And that's what I think a lot of it is. You're going to give some people some people are going to get extra time to go out and see what they want. And you tell their agent hey, we'll release you early if you don't sign with somebody else's practice squad and you come back here. Now, does that mean they have to do it? No, but yeah, instead of going somewhere else, they come back. I fully understand that.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, Matthew, as we sit here today with this roster, what is the biggest position of need that the Kansas City Chiefs have?
The same that it has been. Defensive end. I almost said defensive line.
Hold on here. Oh, okay. All right.
I almost said defensive line, but I think that I am just gonna have to accept that this team is okay with Chris Jones and a bunch of role supporting defensive tackles around him on the interior. That's what they have done for years. They've not really tried to spend too big to add anybody else to them after the Jaron Reed experiment. So I can't in good faith put D tackle there, even though I think it's a pretty weak position. So defensive end and cornerback, it's the same two as always.
I think you're right. I for me, it's defensive end as the biggest position in need for this team right now, especially because we've seen Steve Spagnuolo historically deploy a lot of defensive ends on game day. Like, he likes to have 5. He likes to play 3 defensive ends on third down. He likes guys that can kick inside, move around, be moved around, Chris Jones, and rush 3 on third down. And I just don't know how confident I feel in the horses that this team has right now at the defensive end spot. So find another guy that kind of fits that prototype of someone that can play inside and can play outside. Find somebody that can kind of move around the line a little bit, give you some depth. I have some interesting names we'll get here in a little bit, but I do think that that defensive end with the bullet is the number one need. If the Chiefs walk into this season with the cornerbacks that they have, which I think that's the direction this is heading, how you feel?
Not great. Not great. I think the big thing is it always goes back to the tone of everybody. We just saw who everybody calls their cornerback to getting absolutely diced up by a guy that's about to be cut, the guys that are about to be waived, right? And he was getting torched left and right in the last preseason game. Now, it's a preseason game that doesn't matter. He's playing with other backups that are going to be waived that aren't making teams. And Jalen Watson here is who I'm talking about. But he was I think, obvious choice to be the corner too. And he was playing deep into a preseason game against backups. And it's not like he was dominating the game. That makes me nervous. I don't think Joshua Williams has particularly practiced or looked great in games. Najee Johnson, to me, looks like a guy still recovering from a knee injury. So I really don't feel good about the corner room. And it doesn't sound like when we hear the coaches talk that somebody has really, really impressed them. Not that they've been bad, just doesn't sound like anyone's jumped out and impressed them. So I do think the cornerback room is really scary if they don't add anybody else. We've also said that in years past, not this past season, but in years past, and it's turned out to be good enough. So my issue is more of when you combine the defensive end and cornerback spot together. Now you're saying that we're not going to have great coverage on the back end, nor are you likely to have a dominant pass rush when you don't have a second defensive end that's a good pass rusher to go across from George Karlaftis with Chris Jones. Now I start to get nervous that you're not dominating on either end of the defensive side.
Kathy Welch asks an interesting question. Do you think Leo plays as a third down rusher? Yes or no?
I mean, do I think he's going to blitz a lot? Yeah. I don't think they are going to line him up as a defensive end, though. He just doesn't have the arm length. And even when he does rush, like you watch a lot of, even going back to Wisconsin, when you watch Leo Chenal rush, it's interior gaps. It's maybe a loop, like maybe he's stunting to the inside, right? I'm not saying he can't beat a block, but he's not beating blocks on the edge and then bending around the corner. He's right. He's looping through an interior gap. He's rushing through an interior gap. He's bull rushing somebody. So like, I just don't think he's an outside rusher whatsoever. But yeah, can they use him more and put him and Nick Bolton out there, or him, Andrew Tranquil, put both of them in the A gaps and blitz them a lot and stuff like that? Absolutely. But I don't think he will be one of your quote unquote, 4-down rushers very often.
I think Leo Chenal's best rushing from depth, if that makes sense, rushing from the linebacker position too. I think he's a guy that uniquely operates well with his density and his size and his strength as a guy that, give him a small running start and let him kind of lean in it with that power and explosiveness. I think he's a guy that you kind of want, kind of blitzing a little bit more from depth than just like a stand up edge rusher necessarily. So I kind of like getting him a little bit more downhill before he gets to the, to the point of contact. So I think it's something to have in your bag. And look, like, I think there's two lines of thinking here. Like, yeah, I don't think the Chiefs have a ton of horses at pass rusher. Like, I don't, it's Chris Jones. It's, I think George Karlaftis is a really good kind of complementary piece. Mike Dana is kind of one of your move around guys. Like, he's a role player. He's gonna, help execute stunts to help free open somebody as much as he's going to try to create a ton of, pressure on his own. And then outside of that, you just have so many question marks, right? Steve Spagnuolo does have the ability to, generate pressure, and he will use an elaborate blitz package to help support that group. But you'd still like to see them have a little bit more talent, be it guys that can help support that scheme, guys that can win on their own, guys that can move around inside out. Like, the team just seems to be lacking a lot that. And, I think you look at Malik Herring and Felix Anudike-Uzomah in the aggregate as a rotational piece, but neither of them are serving in a full capacity either. They're either good early down players like Herring, or capable early down players like Herring rather. And Felix Anudike-Uzomah's athletic ability that's yet to be really realized from a pass rusher perspective. So I still think that's the move. I think that's the place that this team needs the most help, which kind of brings up the question. So there's a lot of trade candidates that are starting to surface. There's some players being suggested out there at a variety of positions. We can start at the defensive end spot, because those were a couple that I saw from Bill Barnwell on ESPN.com, threw some names out there. And he actually threw a couple edge rushers out there. I'll start with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, a guy whose fifth year was declined from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, could potentially be had in a trade. What would you think about Joe Tryon being a player added to this Chiefs roster, and how interested would you be in trading for him?
Okay. Yes, I'm interested, but it's all these are going to come down to like, what's the price I'm looking at? And like, that's the hardest part with us sitting here on the outside. We don't know how done the current Tampa Bay Buccaneers are with him, or how much the Chiefs would like him. I don't think he's been overly promising in the NFL. It feels like he would be one that they are just completely done with, and they are willing to sell him off for a late day 3 pick, maybe a future day 3 pick. But he is a guy that I would still be willing to take a shot on. We're 6'4", almost 260 pounds in the 250s. Like, we're close enough in size to what the Chiefs want. I do think that he has worked himself at least into a competent, not good, but competent run defender, despite, not being huge at the NFL level. It's just the pass rush has never fully come together for him. So yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by him, but they would have to be really kind of feeling like they're ready to give him away.
I think, they've got Yaya Diaby players that's kind of ascending for them. And so I think that's part of the line of thinking. They have some capable, defensive linemen that are already on that roster. They just drafted Chris Braswell in the second round. So do you move on from Shoyinka earlier, give Braswell a chance, Diaby, let him continue to ascend, and then try to get something for Shoyinka, try on Shoyinka. So maybe, a fourth or a fifth round pick, something in that range to try. I mean, this is a guy that's had 4 sacks, and 5 sacks in his 3 seasons. They've declined the 5th-year option on him. So it's not a player that they're going to extend. It's not a player that they're going to probably, keep past this year. So do you try to get ahead of the compensatory pick and get a better pick by trading him a year early when you've got a clear replacement for him? So I think that would be kind of the line of thinking if you're the Bucks.
I am very intrigued. I think giving up a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick for Joe Tryon-Shanka and not being willing to give up the 3rd-round pick for Matt Judon would be crazy talk in my mind, because either way, you're still having to pay them going forward, or you're just trading for them for 1 year. It would be crazy to me to not have it be a multiple round discount to get Joe Tryon-Shanka instead of Matt Judon.
Now, to be fair, I think Joe Tryon's gonna go for about it's gonna be a $2 million against the cap, and I'm not saying it's the end all be all. It's 6.5 for Judon and 2 for I'm just saying
it's okay. I'm interested. It's just I think the price for me would have to be way lower if you weren't even interested in Judon for what it was.
So here's my other question for you when it comes to defensive, and this is one thrown out I've seen on social media now, I believe by a Raiders reporter, and also Bill Barnwell's thrown out Tyree Wilson, the defensive end.
Let's go.
Division so far been pretty bad.
Sure. I mean, again,
what would you give up? What would you give up for Tyree Wilson right now?
What would I give up for Tyree Wilson? He's got multiple years left on a rookie deal, so he's kind of cheap. Granted, it's an early round pick, so he's not like, well, how much does he do? Me in contracts, it's a struggle. How much still goes to the Raiders? How much are the Chiefs going to have to pay over the next couple of years? I think that determines a little bit here.
Sure. All right. So I believe his base salaries are $900,000, $1 million, $1.1 million over the next 3 years. The signing bonus is already been paid out and prorated by. There are roster bonuses of 1 million, 2 million. It's nothing much. The highest one's about $4.5 million.
All right, we're now getting close to maybe squeaking into a round 3 pick, the Chiefs round 3 pick. We're getting closer to it. I know he's been bad. I fully understand that he's been bad. They just don't make guys that look like him that have the physical attributes like at all. And having this much club control over a guy that was clearly talented enough, probably shouldn't have gone that early, but should have been, was going to be a round 1 pick. They don't make round 1 picks that look like him. You can get him for a 3rd round pick because the fit's not working or whatever in Las Vegas. Yeah, I'd be willing to give a decent pick, like a round 3 pick, I think, for him at this point in time with those numbers.
Okay, I'm going to throw a cornerback at you.
Okay, yes.
Caleb Farley.
No. That's about the only cornerback name you can get me to say no on, because just cut him. He can't play. He's never played. He's good when he played. We haven't seen him play for years.
The stark difference there. What if you have to get a pick to get him?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think I trust him. I just don't. He's barely played over the past couple of years. He had injuries coming into the NFL. Yeah, he was good as a college prospect, but we're talking 4 years now since he's even played a half a season of football. Nah.
Okay.
That's a freebie.
Let's go. All right, I'm going to throw a couple running backs at you. We're going to start with Miles Sanders.
No, I'm not trading anything for a running back. We can skip the running backs. Would I sign him if he's cut? Miles Sanders. I would sign him. Definitely wouldn't consider trading for him. He's a jack of all trades at the running back position, master of none. And when you already have Isaiah Pacheco, and we really like what we've seen from Carson Steele, and have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I just don't know if you're getting anything different out of him than that group of guys.
Okay. All right. And then Mr. On one hand, on the other hand, Samaje Perine.
I love Samaje Perine. Like, that's a hard yes for me.
And trading him or trading? Would you trade for him?
I mean, what is Sean Payton going to trade him in the division?
Hey, look, the Chiefs literally traded Neil Farrell. Traded for Neil Farrell from the Raiders like a year ago.
Sure, so, okay. He's a third down only running back that is gonna be cut if nobody trades for him. Sure, they can have a 7th round pick for him, right? I'll even give up this upcoming 7th round pick for him. I just think it's funny that Samaje Perine and Jerick McKinnon are like the exact same player in terms of their role, and they have the complete opposite body types. It's just perfection to me. I like Samaje Perine. I think I'd say it like he fits very clear a role the Chiefs definitely need or would like to have. It's just unfortunate that everything he does well is what we hope Carson Steele can start to do. So you don't want to sign him and take away all of those reps from Carson Steele, but you're also trying to win a Super Bowl right now. And Samaje Perine is quite literally one of the better third down running backs in the NFL when that's all you're considering is pass protection. And for the most part, catching dump offs and knowing how to use blockers in the field as a receiving back. So yeah, I would happily take him. And I would think, trading a late day 3 pick for him would make a lot of sense.
Okay, so I've given you a few names. Do you have any players that you've seen cut today? Do you have any players that you would like
that have been cut
or seen out there on, maybe could potentially be up for trade? Is there anybody that's been of interest to you just in the news this last day?
I not yet. Not a whole lot has been out there yet. They were still flirting around with James Bradbury being. I think I saw and it's not. I don't want to say he's on the trading block, but there's been some rumors that he might be available for trade, and if he doesn't get traded for, they might go ahead and just straight up cut him. So that would I guess be an intriguing one for me, as if he goes out there, he fits what the Chiefs do. For the most part, though, when I look through, that was really about it. Not a lot really jumped out to me so far. You want to go kick the tires on like a Michael Ojemudia, cornerback from Iowa a few years back, long, physical, probably can press pretty well. Yeah, I get it if the Chiefs go kick the tires on him. He was cut by the Cardinals, but at the same time, he hasn't really caught on in the NFL. Mm-hmm. It seems like his lack of athleticism is just too big of a hurdle for him to get by at the corner position in the NFL. But those are kind of the only names that I've really seen so far that pique my interest really much at all.
I think tomorrow will be a lot busier. I think there's going to be plenty of movement happening for sure. A lot of these major cutdowns will start happening.
Julian Okwara played defensive end at Notre Dame. He's come to the NFL. He's been not super productive, but he's been able to play. He's been able to see the field when healthy. The only issue is he's dealt with some injuries, and there are definitely concerns that after his most recent injury, he just kind of might not have it anymore, right? He might be kind of missing the fastball, and he was still a developing guy that maybe wasn't the most physical, that wasn't the most technical. He kind of got by because he had some really good physical traits to go along with a unique build of really long arms, kind of a high cut waist. So he's an intriguing one that I wouldn't be upset if they bring him in, but I do think that my hype for it has been, toned down a little bit just after kind of hearing that it does sound like the injuries have really taken a toll on his potential in the NFL.
Is someone currently not on the roster going to be on the 53-man roster before?
Yes.
Thursday. Okay.
I don't think that they are going to roll into week 1 with this defensive end room, cornerback room, and running back room. I think somebody is going to be added to one of those positions. Not all, but one of those positions. They will not stick with just the guys they've had around. Running back is the trickiest one just because I do think they like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They trust him. They obviously really like what they've seen of Carson Steele. So are they really going to be going out there making sure they sign a 4th running back to make their 53-man roster? That one's the one that gives me the most pause. But if a Samaje Perine does get cut or he's available for trade, I could see a player like that. A Boston Scott, I think, also got cut too. Again, third down back, has a very specific role. These are kind of guys that I could see slipping into the running back room, but I would expect a corner or a defensive end added that's not on the current roster.
So I think the Chiefs could potentially let Clyde, release Clyde, put him on the practice squad, and he get there no problem.
Possibly.
I
Yeah.
think there's a very good chance the Chiefs could do that and get him on the practice squad, no problem, leave a roster spot open, and then you go sign a running back. And I think there's a glut of running backs like a Boston Scott out there that could be rosterable relative to what we've seen out of Eric Prince. I actually think running back could wind up being the easiest one to sign, just because I think there's players that have some capabilities of being in that role that they could, involve in the offense pretty easily. So I actually think that could be potentially the easiest one if they wanted to make that move.
Sure. And yeah, I'm not ruling it. I definitely wouldn't rule that possibility out. I don't know if teams are knocking down the doors to sign Clyde. You're having a guy that is dealing with, as what his own head coach says, we just aren't sure what he's going to be able to give us right now. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just not sure where he's at mentally and stuff. So yeah, that's 100% an option that they go that route. It feels like the Chiefs don't usually operate that way with guys that they have had around that have been their guys. Cause he's going to get, I guess he only loses a little bit of money if they cut him and then he goes back to the practice squad contract. It's not like it's a lot, but it feels like for a guy dealing with PTSD, that might not be the best optics. You're like, hey, we cut you so we could pay you a little bit less by putting you on the practice squad. Not saying you do or don't because of that. It's just I do think that is something that you also have to consider for a guy that is loved in the locker room. So if you want him to still be around, I don't know if you go that route.
You think 3 players are being added to this 53-man roster that aren't currently in Kansas City then?
No.
You said corner, running back,
I said one of them. One of them's going to have those. I was just giving you the positions that I think that it's going to happen. I don't think there's any chance that they go into the week 1 with those 3 position groups looking the exact same. All of them together. One of those positions will have a new guy, maybe 2. And running back, I'm with you. That's where you're going to get the most talent available. So if they want to go the route that you just said, and they're willing to just handle, I don't want to say bad press, but that being a story, right? If they're willing to handle that story about Clyde or whatever would come with that, or if they just want 5 running backs on the roster or whatever, 4 running backs on the roster, maybe they do that and they get 2 new players that aren't currently on the roster. But I just think that a running back, cornerback, or defensive end, one of those positions will have some new blood come week 1.
We're going to find everything out here on Tuesday. Can't wait to see what the 53-man roster looks like.
Maybe Hakeem Butler can play D-end. It's not working out at wide receiver, but yet I love Hakeem Butler, man. He is too good for any lower level football league. Too good. He's the best player to touch any lower level football league, but then he just cannot make a single 53-man roster. It's perfect.
R.I.P. to our king. Another release on the ledger for Hakeem Butler. That is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening. We will have Matt Hamilton on with myself and Maddie on Wednesday. Can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you check that out. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Brilliant Speaks is available.
No.
Intrigued?